Welcome to the Afrocentrics podcast, where we explore everything from personal development to fulfillment, African pride, dating, and all things that make your spirit thrive. The Afrocentrics podcast is not just for Afrocentric people, but for everybody. Our shows will entertain as well as educate and focus on uplifting positivity. So take some time out on your commute or lunch break and plug in with us and be inspired. The Afrocentrics podcast, proudly African. I am woman phenomenally. Phenomenal woman? That's me, Maya Angelou. Welcome to this segment of the Afrocentrics podcast, The Woman, Her Story, and Her Impact, where I get to speak to women from across the globe, sharing their stories and how they are impacting their world. Coming to you every Wednesday, 4 p.m. GST. Of course, with your favorite show host, the energetic EJ. So make it a date with me every Wednesday. The Afrocentrics podcast, proudly African. Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Afrocentrics podcast. Yes, it's your girl, the energetic EJ. How you doing? How are you doing this week? I hope that you're doing fine. I hope that all is well with you. But maybe you're having a difficult week. My heart goes out to you, and I just want you to know that it's just like this is a phase, okay? It might be a difficult day, it might be a difficult week, but keep hope alive. All will be well, okay? I just really do hope that these words are going to, warm your heart today. So put a smile on your face and just don't worry. Everything is gonna be alright. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gotta be alright. Remember that, okay? So welcome to this episode of The Woman, Her Story, and Her Impact on the Afrocentrics podcast. And I am delighted to be introducing you yet to another beautiful woman all the way from South Africa. And what she's going to be sharing about today, she's going to be sharing a bit of her story, but then linking it to how she's impacting her world and by extension our world. And we're going to be going the mom side this time around. So just sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea, a cup of coffee. You can snuggle under your duvet and just binge watch this or listen in and learn all you can learn. This my guest today is going to be talking and touching on autism and dealing with autism as a mom. And so you want to listen in, or if you know somebody who is dealing with that currently, or they're not even sure how to handle it, please send this episode to them to make them know that they are not alone. And there are people out there that are ready to help to talk about these things, okay? So, but before I bring my guest on, this is a message for you. Hi there, yes, it's Ejiro here again, and if you have heard me say this before, you're hearing me say it again. But if this is your first time, I need you to know that your voice is part of your brand asset, and the earlier you begin to harness the power of your voice, creating content that are audio related and reaching out to more audience from across the globe, the better you begin to establish your authority in your field. And so podcasting is one of those ways that you can begin to establish that authority, and I would love to help you start and maintain your podcast. Yes, I know you've been thinking about this for a while now, but you're not sure where to start, what to do, how to do it. It's looking like it's a lot of work. Yes, I wouldn't lie. It is a lot of work, but then you can get help, and I'm here to help you. I've put together this short, precise course that will help you break down the processes, not just to start the podcast, but to maintain it, because it is important to maintain it, to grow it up until the point, where you want to monetize it. All right. So I've put together this course, and I want to give you access for free. All you need to do is look at the description of this video or of this audio podcast. Check out for SMPC. Click any link associated with SMPC and contact me to get access to this amazing course that I've put together for you. And besides, I'd love to connect with you. All right. So click on that link now. Let me show you how you can start and maintain your podcast. All right, guys. So this particular episode is going to be in 2 parts. So when you finish part 1, please wait a week for part 2. But just know that it's power packed, and I was inspired when I listened to Dr. Aloysia's story, and I believe that you would be inspired as well. So don't miss out part 1 and part 2. All right. Okay, welcome back. I have my guest. Isn't she lovely? So I have my guest here, Dr. Aloysia Ogle. Woo! I remember. I remember the first time I met Dr. Aloysia, I'm like, Ogle? I just learned that word, literally, from a book. And yeah, is it the same words? They're like, yeah. In case you don't know what Ogle means, like to look at someone like, yeah. Okay, so Dr. Aloysia, good to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very delighted to be here.
Yes, I'm delighted to have you here. Okay, so first of all, while we introduce you, you're going to start with something fun first.
Okay.
Like, tell us something fun about you. And then you can now introduce yourself, like give us all the credentials and all the things, you know. But tell us something funny about something fun or something people don't really know about you.
Okay, so most people judge me by the way that I look. So I want you to guess what, although I'm South African, I want you to guess my makeup because I don't look exactly African, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I want you to guess what makes up me.
So you're a mixed breed,
Yes.
for sure, right? Are you South African Indian?
Partly.
Yeah, I guessed right. Oh, okay. Oh, partly.
Yeah,
There's
so
more.
exactly. You called me a mixed breed, right? So South African Indian is a South African Indian. So the fun thing about me is that I look like this, and everybody thinks I'm Indian, but actually I am a rainbow of mixtures within me, which actually makes me so fun because when you look at me, you think I will speak a certain way or act a certain way until you make the choice to overcome your
Guesses?
misconception of what I look like. And then you get to have the fun after that. So actually I am part Indian, like you said, but I'm also part European, English and Irish, and I'm also part South African Zulu. Yeah.
Wow. She's a
So
cocktail. She's a cocktail of culture. Well, so good to know that. So now, let us meet you. Tell us about you, you know, your life, your childhood, how you grew up, and how you became this beautiful woman that you are today.
So I come from a very rural part of the east coast of South Africa. I was born into a family of farmers. So from the time I was born until I was 5, when I started school in the city, I stayed on a farm. And so that was a really exciting time of my life. I really loved just being in the outdoors and playing, and we lived in a very communal way. So it was my grandparents and my mother and her siblings and my cousins, and then there was a house next door with my great-grandmother.
Wow, I love it. I love the sound of it, like the whole family.
Yeah, like very African, right? My grandfather's siblings and their kids, so it was really just a
wow, that's like a whole village. That must have been fun.
It was really awesome, and I mean we'd go back there every holiday, so that was really just the foundations. And then I went to school in the city, and that's where I spent most of my life. I went to school, and then I went to university. My dream was to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher, but my mother's a teacher, and she said, no, you won't be a teacher. You have to go to medical school.
Wow.
So my parents sent me to medical school, and I became
They
a doctor.
sent you. You didn't want to go.
I really wanted to be a teacher.
It's still in you.
Yeah, it is. I do believe it's my gifting. Yeah, so I teach in other ways, even though professionally I'm not a teacher. So yeah, so I went to medical school, and immediately after medical school I got married, and then a year and a half later I had my son, and then 3 years later I had my daughter. So I was pursuing my career in medicine until my husband sacrificed so much so that I could have a career in medicine. And, there's a point where it was just like a single father because I was working so hard and hardly at home. And so an opportunity came for him to pursue his career. And I just felt like, he'd done so much already for me. Maybe now it's a chance for him to
reciprocate.
Yeah, exactly. So he came out here, and I very rebelliously stayed behind in SA for a few months, but it was very challenging to pursue a career, to study, work, have a kid who has autism, but at the time I didn't know.
That's your son?
My son, and then also being pregnant, so it was a lot. And I'd moved city, so I'd moved from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Oof, so it's like another moving
again. So my community
was
like, I had no one to support me at all. It was really, really challenging. The culture is so different. So after I delivered my daughter, I decided that we were going to come and join him out here in Dubai. So that's how we ended up in Dubai. UAE, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Such an exciting journey.
Yeah, it has been.
Yeah, absolutely. So now you then came here. What was it like, first of all, when you came? Was it when you moved in? Was it the first time you came to the UAE, or have you visited before?
Okay, so what had happened was I was actually in SA for 9 months while my husband was here, and in that 9 months I visited.
Okay.
And it was so interesting. I'd actually come in the month of April, and April's actually Autism Awareness Month. And as we were driving, I was like so amazed that there's these huge billboards and the bridges were covered with signs, autism awareness, and at the time, so what had happened was when I studied medicine, there was a classification of mental illnesses and disorders medically now.
Let me hold you there. What part of medicine did you study? Like, do you have a specialty or you general?
Okay, medicine? So I have a general degree in medicine, but I did postgraduate studies and a certification in forensic medicine.
Oh, okay.
Right. So when I stopped working, I was working in forensic medicine.
Okay.
But when I was studying, when you do psychiatry, you learn about classifications of mental illness. So I knew a type of autism and an old classification of how it's diagnosed and the symptoms of it. And it was the year after I'd completed medical school that they came out with the most recent one.
Oh, that's that one you didn't know at that time.
Yes, because I didn't pursue psychiatry, and so it wasn't something that I would have come across at that stage. So I knew an idea of autism, and it was like, no, this doesn't fit my kid.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, but there's something wrong with my kid, and I don't know what it is. And so I think that visit, did something.
Give you the awareness.
Exactly. So the awareness was like, could he possibly have this thing, And so I think it was many factors that were playing at the same time, and then I just started learning more about it. And
so, did your son get diagnosed of autism back in South Africa, or when you came to Dubai?
It was after we moved to the UAE.
So, was it that you didn't want to find out back then because you didn't believe that was it before you came here, or how did you? What was the process like? Get to that point where you were told, like, okay, this is it.
So, I must say I was very, very busy in the time that my son was born till I moved here. And so he spent a lot of time with his dad and my family, who took care of him while I was busy at work. So, and because I wasn't spending that much time, and also he was my first kid, so I didn't have anybody to compare him with to say, oh no, he's doing that a bit strange, or and then my mother recalls saying or suggesting something, and she said, I we must cut her head off.
Like, don't you say that about my kid. What do you mean, Mom?
Exactly. And then I was like, I could possibly have done that, but I really didn't remember the incident. And she's a teacher, so she knows what kids are like, and she got 2 kids of her own. And then I also was just like, he's still small, he'll grow out of it, let's give him some time to see what happens. And then slowly people would make comments, like his school teachers in nursery school would say, maybe we should consider having him assessed in the future. But at the time, these things didn't make sense to me because I didn't know what the processes were. And like I said, I was like, I know that there are these conditions and he doesn't fit any of those, the ones that I know. So he can't have anything because he doesn't fit what I know.
Meanwhile, there's an update.
Yes, exactly. And then I think as time went on, the gap between typical kids and him was starting to grow.
Very clear.
Right? And then his dad moved away, who was so close to, and then we moved country. And so he started showing behaviors very typical of autism. But in my mind, I was like, no, he's just dealing with the loss of his dad and the loss of his family back home. Let's just give him some time. And, and then his new nursery now became really concerned. They're like, we think he might be deaf because he just stares out the window and he doesn't respond to things.
So let me just come in there so that if anybody is watching or listening to this and they're like, okay, what are these signs? Because you keep saying, okay, the signs became clearer as time went on. What are these things? You weren't able to spot them early because you were busy being a doctor, saving lives. Right? So you couldn't spot those differences early enough. But looking back now, what would you say are some of those signs for especially new moms?
Okay.
Yeah.
So to be clear, autism is very unique in each individual person. So the signs that I can share with you might not be the signs your kid has.
Wow.
Okay. Wow. So this is also why it's such a huge challenge for society to understand it, because yes, we have a criteria, but it's a criteria of a broad description, which may manifest in a very different way in you as compared to me. Okay. So it's understanding how this classification fits into what you see in front of you in the child that's in front of you. Okay. So for my son, maybe I should just speak about what are the criteria for
generally, and then
I'll
what
tell you how my son
displayed
them. Okay. So the classification, the ICD-11 has a classification which is usually followed in Europe, and then there's the APA, American Psychiatric Association, has DSM-4, which is a diagnostic statistical manual of psychiatric illnesses. Okay. So I'm speaking from a medical scientific background, but there's also a very different social understanding of autism, but we can speak about that later. But in the medical scientific side of things, the classification is basically 2 criteria. And within those 2 criteria, the first is communication deficits. So they can have no speech, or they can have speech, but it's not in a normal way. But not even smooth. They can speak like a dictionary or even recite a book, but the way that they communicate, it's not relevant, or they don't have an understanding of how social things happen, which comes naturally for most of us. But this has to be learned over time for people with autism. Some it takes years, maybe never, and others it happens a bit quicker. So particularly in girls, autism can be missed in the beginning stages because they speak really quickly and they speak really well. And because they learn so well, they are able to camouflage their autism symptoms.
Wow, that's hard now, because especially for the parents, and then when it becomes really glaring, it becomes like a shocker.
Exactly, which is usually in the teenage years when the hormones kick in, and then you're just like, how did we miss it all this time?
Oh my God,
it's tough.
I know.
Right, so the first one is communication. And it's also just the way the individual interacts with society, you know, being able to reciprocate in a conversational way or in a behavioral way. They just seem a little odd if they can speak. But if they can't speak, it's more of an indication that, you know,
something is wrong.
Okay. And then the other criteria is behaviors and repetitions. Being, you know, some families who don't know about autism will say, oh, they're so obsessed with that thing, or they keep doing the same thing over and over. So they like things that repeat over and over and over. So if you give a kid with autism a car, they won't play with the car because it's a car. They like looking at the wheels spinning because it's repetitive. Or if you give them a ball, they might throw it with you, but they like watching it go back and forth. So the interest is different.
It's not about the thing itself, it's about the movement.
Yeah. And so in this behavioral criteria is also sensory issues. So the way people with autism perceive things is very different. So they might see things more brightly, and you'll find them hiding behind something to block out the light. Or they might not see very clearly. They might smell things very strongly,
very sensitively,
or they might not smell anything.
Wow! So is it always extremes?
It's on two extremes.
Wow!
Okay, and each sense is different for each individual.
No way!
So you can't. It's not like a cut and paste. If you have this, you have autism. No.
So do you mean
it's a
now?
Group of
So do you mean that one person or one kid with autism can have the different extremes for their different five senses?
Yes.
Oh my God, that explains a lot.
Yeah. And even, for instance, even within that sense, there are different nuances. So, like, let's say the sense of touch. Okay, there is a pressure sensation, which is sharp, a sharp pain, maybe felt really heightened.
Oh my God.
Right, but then there's a dull pain, like if you knock into a wall, if you fall over, which they might not feel anything and they won't cry. So, like, it's just so specific for each individual.
Oh gosh, my heart goes out to every mom and dad who have kids with autism. Like, I don't even know why I don't read about these things, but I didn't understand.
But that's the thing, you know. Even with me, I was a doctor and I studied
medicine. You still like
until it affected me, right? So, which is why
it's really important that awareness
and advocating is so important, because you're not going to learn about something if it doesn't affect you in any way, right?
Wow. So, how did you deal with it? Really, how have you been dealing? Because you found out when your son was 3.
Yeah.
And now he is 7. What has that journey been like from the moment you were sure, like he was diagnosed and you're like, oh my God, like this is real? How did you deal with that?
Okay, so that was really tough, I think, because even though I had a diagnosis, I was still in a lot of denial. It was really challenging. I think I don't know how many specialists I went to just like make sure, just be sure, okay?
Like check again.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's also challenging where in the world you are and who the specialists you see are as well, because they could have studied in the time I studied and they are not up to date, and so they don't know.
Wow.
So we had taken him for speech therapy because he definitely had a speech problem, that was sure. And why the speech problem, we don't know, but we don't know if it is autism. And so we had actually a lot of teachers as well who said, no, he doesn't have autism. Speech therapists, occupational therapists said, no, he doesn't have autism. So we're like, okay, maybe he doesn't, maybe it's something less sinister, and so this was also a bit confusing. And as a parent, when you think that life is going to make something difficult for your kid, you'd prefer them not to have
like let's exchange.
Yeah. So I think I was holding on for any opportunity to say, oh no, he doesn't have it. And then I'm trying to remember the exact moment, because I don't know if it was an exact moment or if it was a process. But we'd gone to 2 different specialists, a neurologist and a pediatric developmental specialist. Actually, we went home to do it because we were going to different people here, and they were saying, no, he doesn't. We went to a few peds who said, no, he doesn't. And also, a place like UAE is so expensive.
Absolutely.
To get any medical care. It was just more feasible for us to go home and get the things done.
Yeah.
And we trust the doctors back home. I trust the system that I studied in. I know that it is solid and it's up to date. So, and obviously, these specialists were referred to me by friends and colleagues that I worked with. So I felt like I could trust them more. But even though they said your son has this, I was like, I don't want. I don't want.
That's not my report. I can just imagine.
And it was so interesting that in my mind, everything that was typical for autism, I was able to excuse. I was able to say, no, he does that because of this.
Wow.
I'm like, no, that's very typical of autism.
Wow. You
And
were really living in denial. Like, no, it can't be.
I didn't want at all.
Oh, wow.
And then it took me a good few, maybe even a year, to really just come to terms with that. I was really depressed, honestly. You were seeing my depression. And I can only tell retrospectively. Because
when it was happening,
yes,
you had no clue. You just...
Nobody with a mental health problem knows that they have a mental health problem.
Oh, gosh. Health is wealth. Like, seriously, like, this is hitting me. It's hitting home for me.
Honestly, you don't know that you're suffering with this weight on your mind, on your soul, on your spirit, because it's so oppressive. And you can barely even just get up to do your daily functioning, And so I was a wreck. Like, I didn't even get up to bath some days. It was so hard to get up.
And then you had a baby. Oh, gosh.
And my daughter, when we found out about the autism, I think my daughter must have been already 6
months.
6 months already, or older even. And... she'd be the one waking up and giving me kisses to get up, shame.
Oh, bless her sweetheart.
She's such a darling. I give her such a hard time just to make up for her brother. I really give
But how did your husband cope in all of that?
It was a big challenge because I think he could sense that it was a huge weight and burden on me. And I don't think he liked seeing that happen. And also just knowing that his son had these problems and we didn't know for sure what it was, and we're paying so much money, and half the people are saying no, half the people are saying yes. And even though you have a diagnosis from home and you come here, people are like, no,
like, what's going on? Why did medicine change from city to city?
So it was a lot for us, I think. But I just thank God that he just came to show himself at that time. But what is very specific that I do remember was the moments there was just this darkness. I didn't realize how I entered into this grey space. I just felt like everything was grey.
Wow.
But I remember the moments that light just came and showed the colour. There was just suddenly colour. And it was a real God moment where he just spoke to us specifically.